Hi,
Hey,
how are you?
good. I just did a mad scramble to figure out how to do this.
Let's see. The guest book.
Yeah, this is it.
There's a little delay, so I can't always hear you right away. So if I'm not answering right away, I have like 2 seconds of pause. So tell everybody what the guest book is about. I'm sure you can do a much better job than I did.
Guest book is, it's a big, juicy family novel that goes back and forth in time from the 30s to the 50s to the present. And it's about an old money family that's run out of its money, but not its place, which is an island off the coast of Maine. And it kind of tracks something that happens in 1936 and the consequences of that as it goes through the generations from 36 to the 50s to the present. And it takes place all in this one, either in Manhattan or this island off the coast of Maine. So it's really thinking about the way in which families kind of tell and half tell their history, and the way that place can hold you to it, can stick the secret to you. So and it's big complicated plot, which of course I love. But
I love, there's also an interesting like anti-Semitic type subplot where the older generation, there was some Nazi involvement. Then the current generation, Evie, I never know how to pronounce it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's in fiction. Okay, so let's say Evie ends up marrying someone Jewish, and so they have to sort of paw through the history and figure things out. And she has photographs that lead her to uncover things and things like that. How did you decide on this plot? Not just that aspect, but how do you craft these intricate family sagas? I'm like, it's so good and juicy and amazing, like you said. So how do you do it?
um, well, I really wanted, when I started this book, it was right when Obama was starting to run for the president in 2008, 2009, as in the end of The Postmistress, my second novel. I really wanted to think about the way he had said, Obama had said, the past isn't dead in this country, it isn't even past. He was invoking Faulkner's words, and he was thinking about that in terms of what his race was going to do, like that the conversation about race and our collective past as a country was going to be on the surface. And I had already thought that what I wanted to write next was a book about anti-Semitism and the ways in which it is and it isn't sort of passed, or how it's being passed on now. I grew up in a family. This family, the old money WASP family, is very much the way I grew up. I have married a Jewish man, and I bar mitzvah. I have two boys who are bar mitzvah, and I really wanted to think about the difference between my grandparents in the 30s and the way they talked about, this or that Jew, and what that and the language, the what's passed down in silence, with under the code of manners, and the sort of casual anti-Semitism. So I wanted to create something that showed the reader what's being passed down, but that the people inside the story aren't hearing the ways in which they're echoing and re-echoing the past. Because I wanted to think about this country and the way in which our collective memory, like how is it, and especially now, here we are, past that, and I mean past that moment where we had Obama's presidency, like just what comes up, on the surface, um, and how how a novel might show that kind of both the hidden and so it took 8 years. So in answer to like how do you do that? I don't know. It took a long time, but that was what I was trying.
Do you like do you have but structurally, visually, do you have to do something? Do you have like piles of things? Is it all in your head? I'm like so fascinated with how, oh my gosh, okay.
My next novel, and um, it's a spy novel, and so I mean, I do love plot, um, but so that basically every novel starts with a character doing something, and I am trying to figure out, well, what what are they doing, why are they doing that, and then it you know the guest book really went like an octopus. I thought I was just going to be doing these two generations, the 50s and the present, with this Jewish WASP love story at the center that's hidden, but gets revealed. But then I realized that the more I was trying to understand the 50s, everything kept sending me back to the 30s and to that generation. So I started to realize that I needed to weave that in too. And the I tried to sort of the architecture of like, what do you do when you're creating layers like that? Like I didn't start in the 30s, go to the 50s, and go to the present. Um, but I had to write it like that. I mean, the way I wrote it and then how I structured it were sort of at odds oftentimes because I needed to have it build rather than just sort of, it wasn't a clear story. It never is. The past is always returning in the most unexpected ways. And it was like that. It was like the past was going to haunt the structure of the present rather than just be the backstory. So does that make
I
sense?
was, yeah, that totally makes sense. I was also wondering because there is a tragedy that befalls the family, the family early on, and I wanted to know if there was some sort of, past event in your family that you couldn't work through or that affected your trajectory, or if you just thought that was a good device to put in the novel, or if it came from some sort of personal space.
Um, and you're talking about what happened in the first chapter. Yeah. It didn't, nothing like that happened, thank, heavens. But it was all about trying to give Kitty, who is the matriarch of this family, very much the center of this whole, of all generations. I wanted to make her a complicated character. She's the one who's most overtly anti-Semitic, but I
Mm-hmm.
about her. I mean, she couldn't be a monster because monsters are, then we can put them at a remove. I wanted to think about, and I wanted my readers to think about the ways in which we are passing on this kind of behavior without thinking about it, like the ways in which we are implicated and connected. So I needed to give her some kind of really her own trauma in order
Mm-hmm.
make her both sympathetic, but also it set up like the dangers of what she was facing ahead. So it's not that it was a device, but it sort of ran away with itself. And this is what I'm sure every fiction writer you've talked to says. Like I started thinking some terrible thing that had happened, and that's where it did. And um, and it set the bar very high. So to come back from that. But in terms of in my own life, I mean, I really wanted to get to the bottom of the way I was raised, the kind of silence, the racism, the racism. I wanted to tackle it in my own family and wanted to think about that.
Do you feel like you've come to some sort of peace or some sort of understanding that you didn't have before, having worked through it in this way?
I mean, I feel like it. I have so clear about my responsibility as a white American who was born in 1960. Like I understand sort of where um, what sort of made me and what I want to keep making now that be better. So um, so it's really more just it's clarifying to, as always, it's clarifying to truly confront rather than just to say, oh yeah, that happened.
Totally. Are you working on anything new?
Crazy spy novel that centers around a cell of women in their 50s and their 80s who are they are basically protecting a document that could overturn the United
Wow. Something light?
States. No, I mean, it's actually this document. I've been giving myself my own little graduate course in Reconstruction and those periods right after the Civil War. So it's a document uh, from 1865 that actually could explode the structure that we're in right now.
Wow. Gosh. Well, in 8 years, I'll interview you again and we can talk about it.
My big challenge, 2 years.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, Zibby, so much.
Okay. Bye.